Mickey drops in.
Shoot me.
It's no secret to most fans of the COD franchise that each title released in the modern day is a far stray from the former glory we once witnessed. The audience currently being catered to is that of an age group that is lower than the series' suggested rating of 18+. But at one time, and for many years, Call of Duty used to have some balls. The lack of pulling punches COD used to do couldn't be any more present than in World at War. I could talk of the violence and grit displayed in many of the titles released before Call of Duty World War II, but those specifics are for other videos. World at War is without a doubt one of the darkest and most unapologetic games ever released even outside of the COD titles. A full-on nosedive into World War II that we will never see done again due to developers being scared of portraying history with any sort of honesty. World at War in particular holds a very special place in my heart, as it truly took my passion and interest for gaming to a whole new level. Experiencing co-op zombies with my older brother on his PlayStation 3 that he would later end up passing down to me for my 13th birthday, and then spending said entire birthday playing through the campaign until I unlocked zombies. World at War to many brings this nostalgia in a similar format, but all of our compliments towards the game are not through rose-tinted glasses. World at War's campaign takes you through the Russian and American POVs of the Second World War, rotating between the two every couple of missions. Although there's only so much a COD game can do with its story, especially when trying to be faithful in its portrayal of real horrific events, World at War has a nifty set of strategies that make the rather simple and short stories even more enjoyable to play through. Right off the bat, the usage of real footage from the World Wars and splicing it together in a creative manner for the game's cutscenes ticks more boxes than it even needs to.
The Red Army's advance into Germany is swift and brutal. In mere months we have reached Silo Heights, the last line of defense before the German capital.
Number 1. The narration and dialogue during these cutscenes is well written and quickly provides context of where you should be fighting for the mission. Number 2. These act as intermissions or intros for the chapters of both stories to allow solid pacing. And number 3. It makes the experience more raw and brutal because we are reminded that what we are playing through is similar to what actually happened in the past, and by proxy can either make the player more scared of history or in most cases way more interested in the history that I was not remotely caring for during school. I'll be honest, my school did an awful job of getting me interested in any history whatsoever, so the fact that a video game could do more for my knowledge on any of the world wars is a prime example of how tying in real world events to your games is a ballsy but excellent choice. If you're going to create any media surrounding such an awful event, you should at the very least have the guts to display the worst of it instead of shying away from the events that took the lives of so many people. It's also not just the real world footage that drives the brutality of the war home. This game is notoriously violent for a COD title.
Drop the rail!
You should have shot them, Jim.
Shut up! No!
Not only are these moments littered throughout the campaign, but dismemberment was also included as a mechanic. so hitting the enemy forces with artillery such as shotguns and explosives can send limbs flying. For the majority of Call of Duty's life cycle, the standard procedure for NPC deaths is them to just be falling over or ragdolling after being shot.
Meanwhile...
But World at War goes the extra mile to guarantee that there is no misconception on how horrifying World War II was. With two sides of the war being explored in the story, it's no surprise that one tends to stand out a bit more than the other. Of course, this is just my opinion, but Reznov and Petrenko's arc is the much more interesting of the two. When we look at Miller's missions, there's not too much direct bonding between you and Roebuck. If anything, the emphasis on gameplay during the Japanese levels can take away from the impact of the deaths that arrive across said chapters. The primary names during the American levels, Miller, which is you, Roebuck, Sullivan and Polonsky, I have some nitpicks about. I'd say that it's kind of difficult to get invested in any of these characters due to the lesser dialogue and lack of meaningful story interaction. I'm not saying the American levels are bad, I think their gameplay is arguably a bit better. The reason I want to point this out is because the slight void in the American side of the story is not only filled by that solid gameplay, but it also helps to bolster how strong the Russian side of the story is. Vendetta is one of, if not the best mission in the entire campaign. It's a cold and visceral introduction to what becomes the heart and soul of your playthrough. Reznov is voiced by Gary Oldman. Combine his excellent voice acting with some badass dialogue and you automatically have a recipe for success. And while I may give my compliments to the gameplay when fighting the Japanese, Vendetta actually starts with creative gameplay mechanics itself. The change of pace from the forward marching combat shown so far is what allows the characters to breathe. Instead of the constant screaming during combat, Reznov can freely monologue to the player as you sneak your way through the vacated buildings.
For days, I have crept through shadows like a rat. This place once echoed with conversations of friends and lovers. No longer. Mark my words, comrade. One day things will change.
Not only that, but the player is forced into sniper combat to match the slower pace, and each of your sniper engagement uses a different setup. From using the noise of the aircraft flying over you to drown out the sound of your shots at the start of the mission,
Directly overhead, the sound of the engines will drown out your shot.
Ready? Shoot now!
having Reznov draw out an enemy sniper for you to pick him off,
Sniper! Get inside now!
I will draw his fire. Keep your eyes open for the flag.
Sure! Did you see him? He knows exactly where we are. Good hunting! The patrols will surely have heard those shots. We need to get moving.
focusing on the tanks of flamethrowers for collateral damage.
Hold your fire. Do you see the flamethrowers? You must choose your moment. Exploding the fuel tank will incinerate anyone standing nearby.
Excellent aim, Dimitri!
And finally having to land a crucial shot on a high priority target.
The death of General Axel will be just the begin. Look ahead, Dimitri! You are a true master!
By the end of Vendetta, it's established that Reznov respects Petrenko in the way that you both work together to turn the tides against the enemy. This narrative is then built upon in a small side plot involving Private Chernov in the following chapters. You and Reznov are now buddy-buddy with one another, and it's clear that he holds you to a high standard and respects Petrenko's abilities as a soldier. When commanding Chernov to put the injured soldiers out of their misery in the next mission, he can't bring himself to grit down and do it.
You 3, finish those rats! Once again, you cheat death. Our tanks are ready to smash this line, and... Chernov! I am not hearing gunshots!
There is no point, Sergeant. They are already bleeding to death.
Then maybe our friend will help them bleed faster.
This lack of violence and intent is a recurring trait with Chernov going forward, as he is shown to prefer mercy over those who surrender. In the first instance, you are granted the option to finish the job yourself. Yet again, an example of the game not pulling its punches and leaving the moral choices to the player. And this idea of Reznov trying to bring out the merciless side of Chernov backfires as he charges face first into a flamethrower in the final mission.
Dmitri!
Someone should read this.
Move inside!
It's these small subplots that make the Russian side of the story stand out more. When you've got Reznov screaming in your ear, you really feel that shit, because he's constantly referring to the lack of mercy the Germans showed his troops, and maybe I'm just biased, but for whatever reason, even the war cries of the Russians are superior. The American missions do a stellar job of making the enemy terrifying in the context of war, but the Russian side makes you feel like the more scary between the two armies that's engaged. Heart of the Reich has got to be one of the most primal and relentless portrayals of an army storming the enemy ever attempted in a video game. Pressing forward, blowing up artillery guns, clearing through each level of the building whilst physically and metaphorically causing the enemy to collapse. Compare this to the constant terror of being pushed back by bonsai charges during missions where you're meant to be on the offensive. It's an excellent contrast in gameplay and character that is easy to overlook at face value because the campaign's seamless structure and pacing. I'll be honest, writing a script for this video has been a pain in the arse so far. Not by any fault of the game, it's actually the opposite. Having so many great elements I want to talk about, but not knowing which to tackle first is kind of driving me up the wall, so I have no idea yet if I'm going to talk about the music and sound first or second. The reason being that the first thing you hear and feel is the ambience and tone of the game's intro and loading screen. Not to say that this isn't the case with every other game in existence, it's just that World at War does it better. COD is known for its impeccable menu music. The soundtracks are so consistently strong that I can't help but use most of them as my background audio for these videos to convey certain emotions. Where World at War stands out is that no other soundtrack in the series sounds remotely similar. The first chord that's heard sounds like the gates of hell opening. Solemn vocals and the ambient gongs of war is all this game needs to let us know that this ain't no Hollywood action adventure. But for when the combat requires a track to match a faster pace, no aura is lost. The soundtrack is utter perfection, but what about the sound design? Surprise surprise, no corners were cut here either. I think this goes hand in hand with the weapon animations and handling, but the weapon sounds are so rustic and gritty. Every sound is satisfying and unique, from the snappy sound of an MP40 the thunderous echo of the PTRS, the steady chug of using the STG, or the chainsaw-like ringing of the PPSH and the MG42. Maybe I'm overselling it due to nostalgia, but to be honest, I don't care. Each weapon feels special and adds an extra flair to the correlated sides of the conflict. In the darker realms of the sound, we can once again look back at dismemberment. Not to get overly morbid, but another part of the honesty of the violence shown to the player is the visceral use of sound effects when the enemy perishes. The game is actually disgusting. When you're granted a tank and launch an entire shell into a troop, not only will you see the limbs flying, but you also hear it. The consistency of what's shown to the player during real footage cutscenes and what you play through is both ballsy and captivating, but Treyarch did not shy away from integrating this same tone and horror into their more fictional side of the game. The measure of how perfect a game or game mode is often has to do with the replayability and lifespan, whether or not the mode becomes timeless, if you will. Everybody who's clicked on this video presumably has a strong relation or pivotal memory of their first time playing zombies, and most will have started with the original Nakta Untoten. If you don't, I'm sorry for your loss. That feeling of your stomach turning as the campaign credits end, only to be left fending for yourself against the undead hordes in the middle of nowhere, is borderline a canon event for many young gamers during this generation of COD. This was back when COD was actually scary, but if the campaign you had just played beforehand wasn't such a dreadful reality check of war and instead portrayed war as an epic mind-blowing spectacle, this zombies introduction wouldn't be anywhere near as unnerving. The overall tone of the game lines up with a zombie mode. Nakta Untoten is flawless in my opinion. I am aware that plenty of long-time zombies players claim that it shows its age, because it's so easy to become hotwired to an infinity gauntlet of perks, Swiss Army knife weapons, and Tomb Raider puzzle-ass Easter eggs. But sometimes the best way to test the waters with a new mode in your franchise is to just start simple and establish the basics. Nact was so addictive with its challenge and intensity that it spawned one of the most notorious zombie modes that was capable of competing with the likes of Left 4 Dead for years to come. A simple round and points based system, serious dark atmosphere, and an enjoyable ramp up in difficulty with an exciting RNG element to your weaponry. Fine tune each one of those ideas with the same effort that you put into your campaign, and lo and behold, COD has just leveled up for years to come. Now when I loaded up the game to replay for this video, I was blessed with the realization that all of the original Zombies DLC are in fact free on PC. So we shall dabble. I'd never actually played the World at War originals until making this video, as all of my experience of Verrucht, Shinonuma and Darius took place back on the Black Ops 1 remasters. Whilst I may prefer said remasters due to the Black Ops 1 graphics and weapons, there's something intriguing about the OG. There's the obvious increase in difficulty with the zombies grabbing and pulling the player closer should they land a hit. Not my favourite mechanic, but the trade-off is that there's much smaller zombie spawn limits per round, allowing you to get to higher rounds more efficiently, and it also makes it a bit more scary. That and the OG weapons and graphics, which by the way, I haven't even mentioned this yet. World at War is fucking gorgeous for a 2008 release. Sure, if you look close enough it can be a little bit rough around the edges, but the art style and detail across the board is a feast for the eyeballs, and that's coming from someone who recently indulged in Cyberpunk, for God's sake. Anyway, let's get back on track. What's overlooked about the original 4 maps is that it's probably the most progressive selection of maps ever made. Whilst titles such as Black Ops 1, 2, 3 and 4 all took creative leaps to evolve the gameplay loop, World at War established all the fundamentals one map at a time throughout its life cycle. Nacht standing in as the basic bare-bones survival, Verrucht adding player separation, power and the perks, Shinonuma adding the Hellhounds and randomized perk spawns later used in the likes of Nuketown Zombies in Black Ops 2, and of course Darius introduced Pack-a-Punch. So if you play these maps in order, it feels like an evolving gauntlet of maps that increase in complexity. This also means there is a high likelihood of there being a map for everyone's preference. But the one characteristic each map does share is the gritty, unapologetic spookiness that gradually deteriorated in the later renditions of Zombies. Nacht is an abandoned bunker in the middle of the foggy woodlands. Verrucht is a rundown insane asylum. Shinonuma a rotting swamp, and Darius in the 935 base of operations. Gradually, the concepts may reduce in fear factor, especially with you being granted more ways to defend yourself, but the game never dwindles on its sound, lighting and level design in order to retain the terror that is littered throughout both the campaign and Zombies. World at War is a very special product of its time that has aged incredibly well. We'll never see another COD quite like this. Most developers across all sorts of games would be too scared to portray the World Wars in this level of detail and honesty. And I get it, right? I mean, the world's becoming increasingly soft. But yeah, compared to a lot of the other games in the franchise, World at War is arguably the darkest in the series, only really being rivaled by maybe Black Ops 1. If you have enjoyed the video, please feel free to hit the like button and subscribe, help support the channel. I focus on high quality video game essays if you're new here, so if you want to see more good content like this, maybe even turn the bell on for notifications. Appreciate everyone for stopping by on the recent videos, leaving your comments and giving me some more momentum, and I'll see you guys in the next essay. Take care.